Welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast After Dark. I've got Rob Magao on today's episode. Rob, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
I am super excited to talk to you today. I got connected with you through our mutual friend, and that is Wild Bill Brasky of Wild Bill Brasky Knife and Tool Company. He was on just a few weeks ago. We talked combatives, we talked shooting, we talked culture, we talked training, we talked about a lot of things, and he had a lot of very good things to say about you as he studied with you and under you for quite some time, and suggested I give you a reach out. He put us together, and I've been waiting for this thing for a couple of weeks now. There's a lot of questions that I have, and I know you're going to be able to answer those. But before we get into that, let's just talk about you. Let's set the stage for who Rob is and where you're coming from, kind of what the journey's been like for you. There's a law enforcement journey there. There's certainly a martial arts journey there. And I just want to kind of give everybody an idea of, if they haven't heard about you, where you're coming from.
No problem. Great. As far as Bill is concerned, Bill just got his black belt about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, right after he was on the show.
I did see that.
So, I got him his black belt. So he's a great guy. But anyways, my name's Rob Magao. I'm from Connecticut, and I began martial arts training when I was a kid. I started off in judo in an after-school program, and then from there, that program stopped after a few years because the instructor passed away, and then I was kind of in transition, looking for something, and I came from kind of a background where we didn't have a whole lot of sidebar money to be spending on other things. So the after school program was where I could get martial arts, and without that, it was kind of tough. We did go and look at some other schools, but I never really found anything until I found more of a traditional Japanese Jiu Jitsu and Okinawan Go-Jiru school that someone taught out of their backyard in the late 80s, early 90s. And this is pre-UFC, pre-BJJ in the United States kind of thing. And I did that for many years. Then in 1993, saw the UFC, and I was like, I have to learn this. I have to learn jiu-jitsu, and became obsessed with that. And then started learning jiu-jitsu. I became eventually a black belt. I'm a third-degree black belt under Pedro Sauer. And I became a police officer in 1997. And I worked for 25 years as a cop in Connecticut. I worked in all kinds of divisions, from patrol to investigations to major crimes to narcotics to a tactical team. And I did a lot of work with police and training, especially when it came to defensive tactics and arrest and control type procedures. So I own 2 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools, one in Hebron, Connecticut, which is where I'm right now. And my other one, my main school, is in Manchester, Connecticut. And I've had that school operational for about 26 years. It started as a club for police officers, and then it graduated to allowing just anyone from the community to go. And then it's grown into a full-service martial arts school. So that's kind of my background. I'm married, got 3 kids, all boys. They all train. My oldest son just got his black belt as well with Bill. So pretty cool.
That's outstanding. Yeah, just not to let that one slide. Yeah, I know that was a long journey for Bill. As you see, he was super excited about it. He's a man of few words unless you really start to dig into some stuff with him. And he put that out on the interwebs. I was super happy and proud of him. And there was a little bit of a celebration there. He's got a pretty contagious smile when you can see it, and there were a few shots of him in there with that big smile on his face. So congrats to Bill and to you and your schools for helping him through that journey. I know there was a lot that led up to that, but that said, you've influenced and impacted a lot of people and continue to do so. I just want to jump back to the law enforcement here real quick. What drove you there? What was the I guess the impetus? Was this something you knew you always wanted to do, or was? And I asked that because it's kind of two different types of people. There's a person that always knew they wanted to be a cop, and then there's the person that maybe ran into some trouble with the law, or had maybe some troubles in life and recognized they wanted to be on the other side, maybe got helped, or got themselves into a situation. So I wonder which one of those you are.
Well, it's kind of a combination of factors. I always had a tremendous respect for the uniform and for military law enforcement. My dad was in the military, my grandparents, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of grew up in that kind of an environment, having respect for that authority. But I also grew up, around individuals that had run-ins with the law and problems with the law. And some of my own friends growing up got into some problems. I lost a few friends over the years that, kind of went down the wrong path and ended up in a bad way. And I kind of straddled the line in high school. I was never a bad kid, but I was also intrigued by both sides. And And but I also kind of wanted to. I knew in my mind I kind of wanted to be a cop. And at one point, I remember the day specifically. It was a winter time. I was working at a grocery store, and it was heavy hail and snow and wind and everything else. And I was probably 16. And my aunt, who was kind of a sister to me, Sandy, because we grew up in the same house from the time we were born. She was 6 years older than me. She worked there as well. And it was the end of the night, and her car was out in the parking lot, and I brought it up to the front doors so that she didn't have to go out into the snow because she had cancer, and she was going through radiation and chemo and everything. So as I brought the car up, the parking lot's empty. There's no other cars except hers and mine. As I bring it up, I get out of the vehicle, and a police officer has pulled up behind me, and they have their lights on. They motion for me to come over to the car. They don't get out of the car. Their window comes down a little bit. I can feel the heat from inside the car, and the guy starts yelling at me. He's like, "Give me your license." And I'm like, "Excuse me, sir?" He's like, "Give me your license." He starts like, being a real aggressive with me and stuff. And I'm literally in a short sleeve shirt that says the store name on it, and I've got like a smock on, and I'm all, it's really snowing and like hailing pretty hard at this point. And he's like, "Why are you driving like an asshole?" and stuff like that. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. You can literally see my tire tracks." I pulled my aunt's standing right there. It's her car. I pulled it from there to here. I'm trying to tell him, and he doesn't want to hear it. Basically, I find out later that he got called there because there was people doing donuts in the parking lot on the other side of the parking lot. And when he pulled in, they're already gone. He just happened to
you were there,
up, right? And you can clearly see the tire tracks don't match. So anyways, I try to explain it to him. I finally give him my license. He puts the window up. I'm sitting there. A couple of minutes goes by. He rolls the window down. And to this day, I don't know if he realized he was wrong or not, but he took my license. He says, "If I had more time and it wasn't so shitty out, I'd write you up for reckless." And he took my license and he whipped it out into the parking lot. Wow. And then he drove off. So when I picked up my license,
great experience.
When I picked up my license, I said, "I'm going to be a cop because I can do it better than that guy."
Yeah. So that's what I mean. There's these experiences happen along the way. Okay. So getting in law enforcement, so you mentioned 25 years in law enforcement, did a lot of things. You went through that very, very quick, but lots of experience. Talk about just maybe the environment that you worked in then, or kind of that journey. I know you said you did a lot of things. There was a tactical team, there was narcotics, there was detective work. That's a lot of things. So you're covering a lot of bases, which I think very relevant to who you're teaching, what you're teaching, and how you're doing it, and what you're bringing to the table. And we're going to get into this later. We're going to talk about who the instructors are that are out there, and who's teaching who and how they're doing that. But I guess my point of that or my question is, just talk about a little bit about the work, like the environment, the community, the area that you worked in. What was that like? What did it look and feel like?
So the first 20 years of my career, I worked for the West Hartford, Connecticut Police Department. And it's a department of about 130 officers, 135 officers. And we would run maybe 10 patrol cars, and then there was bosses and street crime unit. And we would have, anywhere between 10 and 15 cars on the road. We answer roughly 60 to 70,000 calls a year. And we were sandwiched between Hartford, the city of Hartford, and city of New Britain, and some other busier areas around. So we had a lot of overflow from those areas into our town as well. We had our own kind of issues, but being so close to the city of Hartford, I got to work with them quite a bit over the years, back and forth on different units and stuff. So they're a larger agency with a significantly higher crime rate, but both agencies had, we're busy. And for Connecticut, West Hartford's a pretty well-known police department. And back in the day, it was relatively well-known for kind of leading the way when it came to changing training and, getting like simunition training and, rifles and, EOTechs at the time, and now aim points and, all these kind of things. They were kind of one of the first to do a lot of those things. So I worked at that police department. I worked in patrol for 9 years. In that 9 years, I came out a couple of times to work in like traffic for a period of time and to rotate into narcotics, or a street crime unit, I should say, a couple times. But then I did 9 years of patrol. Then I became a detective, and I worked in our detective division. And then when I first got hired, we didn't have laptops in our cars. We didn't have cameras and body cameras. We didn't have tasers. Right. There wasn't even such thing as a taser. We had our baton, a PR-24 when it was my first baton. or we could carry the wood stick, either one we wanted to. And we had pepper spray, and we had our Glock, and that's pretty much it. And a radio. We didn't have all these different things that exist now. There was no cameras, and it was a little more old school, but it was starting to transition. So we were still chasing people back then. Someone ran a stop sign, you pursue them as far as you wanted to until they crashed or until you got them, right? So and then as the time went by and laws started to change, it got a little more restrictive. And then I would say the big change for me, I saw it was right around 2015, 2016. That's when I started to see everything kind of changed, and the old style of policing was kind of fading out because all the old timers were now gone. That old regime of police that were out there that had started in the late 60s and 70s and 80s had kind of all retired, and now that new generation was in there, and I was now the old guy, and I could see that the separation of the way society was changing and the technology that police were now having, and the restrictions on our job, and the public opinion of us and the media opinion of us, all those things really changed over my career. When I first got hired, a lot of respect for police for the most part, and by the end of it, it was like protests everywhere, and it was quite a difference. And so it was a big roller coaster and shift in the wrong direction towards the end of the career. And then when I retired from West Hartford in 2018, I went into the state system. We have resident trooper offices that cover towns that also have local police that work under the state police, and I worked with them for a while.
Okay.
And I did that. So that community was more like rural, spread out, large areas to patrol, kind of alone all the time, don't have a lot of people with you. So I got to experience kind of both sides of policing. I got to experience the side where, hey, you call for backup and 10 cars show up, and I know what it's like to wait 25, 30, 35 minutes for someone to come too. So kind of both of those exist.
Yeah, so thank you for walking me through that in that detail, because I think, again, just going back to your perspective and the relevance to the types of folks that you guys you're training or that you're interacting with, that roller coaster I think is important. You mean you've seen the good times, the bad times, anything in between. And you also mentioned which I had a question about, was kind of that your agency was sort of on the front end of advancing things through things. I mean, you mentioned like tools, optics, defensive tactics, and things like that. I wonder can you tell me what was driving that? Like, why was that area, that agency, that region kind of pushing that direction? Where was that coming from? Who influenced that? How did that go?
Well, there was, I think you know Craig Douglas, right? Craig?
I do know Craig
Craig's
Douglas,
a very good friend of mine. He's actually coming up to my school in September. He comes every year or so. And Craig will describe what happened in Connecticut, because he has talked to me at length. He's been up here many times, as kind of the perfect storm. So basically, it's a small state. So we're the second smallest state. So you can create change a lot faster here than I could, say, in California, because it's so spread out, so huge, right? If you become well known here, it's a little easier to do the area. That's one thing on my side. Second thing on my side is when my group of people got hired at my police department, we ended up with about 7 or 8 kind of unique individuals that came from different backgrounds. One guy, Chris Chappell, was a ranger. This other guy, Jeremy Clark, was in the military. And then there was all these other guys that kind of all came together at the same time and got hired, and we became friends pretty quick. And we kind of, what we refer to as burned the forest down. We came in and saw like, hey, this is not right. Like, I knew from my martial arts training that the defensive tactics was not right. Chris knew that from his ranger time that the tactics was not right. So we knew like these things are wrong. They're being taught wrong, and we were kind of outspoken about it. And in the beginning we made some enemies, but at the end of the day we're like, hey, we'd rather tell you the truth than lie to you. So and we had a chief that at that time he wrestled his whole life, and he wrestled in college, and he was a coach, and he kind of saw some of the things I was doing, and immediately was like, you know what, that makes sense. And he said, hey, let the kid run with it. And he gave me the authority to do that, and basically allowed me to go into the training division on a temporary assignment. Obviously, we weren't there every day, but when we would do any kind of defensive tactics or arrested control, he would allow me to teach that. And they didn't really put any parameters on me whatsoever. They just said, as long as it matches, Graham versus Connor and state and local law.
Yep.
And all that kind of thing, they kind of let me run with it. And they had an attitude in our police department at that time. I don't know what it's like there now because I've been retired for a while. But they had an attitude that if you have a skill, we hired you partially because of that skill you possess. If you have that skill, who are we to try to manipulate or change that skill or ignore that skill? If I had a boss tell me once, hey, if the New York Yankees brought in a pitcher from another major league team, they wouldn't make him sit the bench for 3 years. They would start him in the next game because they hired him because they're a good pitcher. Why would I take a brand new officer just because they've only been off FTO for 6 months and not put them in a position if they have extensive experience in that relatable situation? Because we're wasting time. So there was a unique individual. I know that's rare. That doesn't happen in law enforcement very often. If you're not living and breathing in the room for the last 10 years, you often don't get to do much. My agency thought outside the box, and they took round peg, round hole, and they matched them. And they were very good at that.
I'm listening to you, and there's going to be people listening to this that are just like, yes, all of that. Why can't we have that here? As a law enforcement officer in another agency. You painted a very good picture of the quote unquote perfect storm. And what it is it's a collective of people that all share some core probably values and goals. That is understanding that what we're doing could be way better. And the goals being we can make it better, but we have to give people autonomy to do that. We'll probably make some mistakes along the way. We know what our right and left gutters are to some extent, but we have to put some effort, some finance, some time into making this happen. And that seems to be the biggest struggle is people wanting to make that, and I mean that like on a larger scale, people wanting to make that commitment. And I think I talk to so many people on the show frequently about there's fear involved in making a mistake or making the wrong decision, or now you're going to have conflict because somebody's not going to agree with this decision. But if you can get a little bit of critical mass going with a few people, right, and they can actually get a little bit of momentum going, it starts to take off. So my question now is the defensive tactics, or let's call it combatives side of things. This has been a lifelong thing for you. You meet these other guys, they're like, yes, that dude, that's what we need. We need more of this and less of that over here. When does the instruction piece start to take hold for you where you're actually doing it kind of at an official level within the agency?
So I got hired in 97, but I was in the academy the first, obviously 6 months or so. So it would be the end of 97, early 98. I'm off FTO. I'm kind of on my own. Okay. I start going to calls like anybody else. And even on FTO, I had a few calls that we had to put hands on people. And my FTOs and my immediate supervisors, when I was on my own, they witnessed several times, me, take control of someone and get them down and get them in handcuffs. And, and these people weren't hard to control if you have any level of training. If you take an average everyday, person that wrestled in high school a couple seasons, they would have no problem. It's not like it was a fight for my life. But at the same time, they're trying to get away. They're evading, maybe throwing a lazy punch and a clinch, a body lock, take them to the ground, hammer lock behind the back, handcuffs on, and it's over, right? And they're like, hey, where did you learn this? Like, this is what they teaching in the academy now? And I'm like, no, I've been doing this on my own for years. And I start to explain it to them what it is. And then if they kind of went back and told the upper management's like, well, hey, they brought me in. They said, hey, show us what you're doing. And I showed the lieutenant, and the lieutenant's like, well, let me feel it. So I grappled, I rolled with them. And at this time, I'm, barely, I would say, 3-stripe white belt, maybe, what we would look at today, I had other martial arts background too, but I would say right around a blue belt level. Okay. So, but back then that was a lot, right? So I would grapple with them, and they would feel it, and that's like proof. A lot of times cops will have big attitudes about things, or like, oh, I know better. But if you can show them and they can feel it, like, they're not stupid people. They're like, oh, you're doing this repeatedly to me, and I can't stop it, and I can't get away from you, and you're not really hurting me, and you're getting me in positions where I can't really fight back. Well, how do we get this involved in police work? So then from that point, they started having me kind of show like the squad. I was on third shift. So they would, once the evening got kind of quiet, 4 or 5 in the morning. They would bring me in. We had some mats there, and they would bring cops in a couple at a time, and I would go through the stuff with them on the mats. And then it kind of got back to our training division that was happening, and I wasn't a certified instructor.
Right.
So they basically kind of
here comes the conflict.
Yeah,
here comes the conflict I was mentioning before.
A little mini halt to it for a few minutes. They're like, "Hey, what's going on here? This kid's not, not certified." And our chief at the time is like, "Hey, you know what? Okay, send him to the class." So they sent me to the Connecticut Arrest and Control Instructors class, is what it was called at the time. And it was a lot better than what the academy had provided, because it was like a transition time where they were changing programs. But it still fell short in a lot of areas, and it never really evolved. And they didn't have any clinch work, which I think is absolutely vital. If you can't fight in the clinch, like, you can't fight, So It didn't have any groundwork, or very limited groundwork. It didn't take into consideration weapon entanglements. It didn't take into consideration any of that stuff. And we were already doing that. We were putting on like Everlast headgear and like old Kempo gloves, or with the fingers like Bruce Lee used to wear, or boxing gloves, and trying to punch while someone tries to shoot you with their sim gun, and having knives coming after each other in unpredictable ways. And we have videos of that stuff we put up on our Instagram page sometime, and it'll show us in our woodland camos from the 90s, doing that kind of thing. And people think that's all new stuff. You know what? It's been being done for generations. It's just that now it's more out there because of social media, right? And it's evolved greatly, especially thanks to guys like Craig and people like that. So that's how it kind of started in my police department. And then I went to this class. And then when I got done with the class, I basically gave my evaluation like everyone else, and I was kind of critical about it. I'm like, hey, you know what? This is better than what I got in the academy, but you're missing all these areas. And the person that ran that, to their credit, called me in and was like, hey, I disagree with some of your points here, and I've mentioned this on other podcasts where they'd be like, hey, I don't think cops should fight on the ground. I think that we should be up on our feet. We should be controlling people. We shouldn't be rolling around on the ground. And I said, well, I agree with you. I don't think cops should fight on the ground either, but, gravity doesn't give a shit, and we're on 2 feet. We're bipedal. We can be overpowered. We can be outmatched. We can slip, trip, fall, be surprised, slip on anything, icy conditions, whatever. And pretty soon you're on your back, you're on the ground, and someone's on top of you. And if you don't understand how to manipulate that environment, if you don't know how to understand how to get head position, how to get angles, how to get an underhook, how to get back to your feet, like you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You're going to start eating punches. Your weapon's involved. They can grab a hold of it. Like, you have to understand that environment and how to get back to your feet. If you don't know how to get back to your feet, if you don't know how to fight in the ground, you'll never get back to your feet. And somebody will then control you there. So they came down to my school. It was a club more at the time, for law enforcement, actually, and paramedics and firefighters and military people and stuff like that. And they came down and they found out what every person finds out when they get on the mat for the first time in jiu-jitsu, just like I did. I got my ass kicked by a 15-year-old kid the first time I went on the mat in jiu-jitsu. And I was probably 23 at the time, and already a black belt in other systems. And this kid had trained for 6 months, and I couldn't do anything to him. So that was like a wake-up call to me as well, right? So he came to the organizer of the Connecticut program at the time, came to our school, kind of felt what we were doing, and he said, hey, you know what? I think that you have a point. So they started allowing me to do a ground fighting component for Connecticut. And I started teaching that throughout Connecticut, like in-service classes, and the academy would host classes, and people would come from different agencies to go to that class. And that's kind of how ground fighting and grappling and clinch work and vertical barrier work got introduced into Connecticut. And over 20 some odd years, we have perfected it as much as we can, and we're always trying to evolve. But that's how it started.
So it's interesting, like, these things always start in somebody's garage or in a back room somewhere. Like, almost all you guys that are, at the front end of this and nearly speaking the same language, not completely, but nearly speaking the same language. It starts like that. It's like, look, we know what we got taught. We also know what we're dealing with out on the street, and we know what our experience tells us from being in martial arts. Mm-hmm. And we got to figure this out. We have to, quote unquote, pressure test some different things, and we're not going to get that provided to us by the state. They have a curriculum they got to follow, and going back. So there's the way I understand it in Connecticut, it's a state state academy system, correct? And then you go out to the municipal agencies from there. I know there's a lot of states around the country that run that way. So somehow you have to kind of infiltrate, or you have to move from the garage to maybe some back room at the agency with a few mats in it, right? And then you got to get in trouble, right? You have to have some conflict. They have to slap your hand. Then you have to get in front of the guy somehow, hopefully in your case, somebody that's like, okay, I'm listening now. And now you can start to have these conversations and little bits get added on. I think the point I'm trying to make is this is a journey of constant, you have to keep pushing forward. You have to, and I don't want to say, there has to be a little risk involved here, a commitment to, I know I'm going to get in maybe a little bit of trouble here. Maybe I don't, but when I do, I'm not going to take that answer as, well, I'm just going to give up on this and I'm going to move, and I'll just move on and I'll just do my own thing. It's this constant pushing the envelope. Craig has a similar story. You mentioned Craig Douglas with ShivWorks. He has a similar story of that. I've talked to so many people out there that's basically what they did. So you're a law enforcement officer. Now you're teaching some at the state. They're starting to adopt some of this stuff. It's starting to enter into the curriculum. I imagine the results are good. And when I say that, that's a very broad statement that people are like, yeah, this is good because gravity doesn't give a shit. Now we're bringing weapons to the table. We weren't even talking about that before. What do we do? And ultimately, this turns into something bigger. When does the school start for you? When do you actually start that?
Yeah, so I start my school as a club. We named at the time Bushido Jiu-Jitsu Academy. So we still kind of go by that moniker, even though it's known by Manchester BJJ up here a lot. And we kind of picked that kind of like samurai code, samurai means to serve, police officers serve. So it was kind of like a moniker, a nickname that we picked for our little club, and it kind of stuck over the years. And it was just a collection of us that were kind of doing these kind of things. Jimmy Codges, myself, there's a few other cops at the time that no longer train. But at the time, we had like a couple judo guys. We had a boxer. We had a guy that did kickboxing. We had karate guys, aikido guys, kempo guy, all the wrestlers. And we just would just show up in a room and see what works. You know what I mean? And we always kept coming back to the grappling tends to work more often than not. So we started focusing on that, but never forgetting that strikes have to be involved. Weapons are involved. We look at it as 5 different ranges. Like there's striking, there's clinching, there's takedowns, there's groundwork, and there's weapons. And each one of those ranges can be broken down further, but you have to understand elements of all of those, but which ones are we going to use the most is probably going to be the grappling, right? So we concentrated on that a lot. And of course the UFC was getting a little more popular, and my club started in 99, and then it really started to turn into a martial arts school right around 2004, 2005, which is when the Ultimate Fighter started to come out. And now
I was just gonna ask about the influence there. It's like people are seeing it on TV now and on pay-per-view, and they're going, oh, there's something more for this. And it's interesting what you said, the different characters that are involved here and all the different backgrounds that are coming together, and they're recognizing the strengths and weaknesses in their backgrounds. It was the same thing we were watching happen on TV, when they're putting guys in the ring, like this guy, was the grappler, or this guy is the kickboxer, and they both bring something to the table, but who ends up coming out top on top. And it was going to the ground. It was going, people were trying to avoid going there, but you could immediately, as soon as it went to the ground, you knew back then, me watching it, and I had very little experience at that point, you just knew who was going to dominate. Like, it's like, oh, this guy has no idea what he's doing on the ground. My point being there is this, okay, so you have this outside influence as well as the inside influence, which is kind of moving things forward. So school begins, and you start to grow this thing. And when does it turn into a business?
It right around that time. That's when I'm like charging people to come, and they're up until then it was a dues that we collected, but it went to a martial arts school that allowed us to use their mats. So we started off on 2 gymnastics mats in a backyard and in a garage and in a second floor abandoned room of our police department, and then different locations. We would train different spots, and then that grew to, hey, there's this judo school in Manchester, Connecticut. It was called Judan Shin Martial Arts. The guy that owned it, Stephen Luckingham, he was a really good judo guy. And he's like, hey, we got some spare hours we're not using the school. If you guys want to throw a few $100 our way, we'll let you use the school. So we ended up going there. And then we kind of attracted some of the judo people over. We attracted They had other martial arts training there, like Taekwondo, Aikido, and we would, get some people to come over from those to try us out, and still cross-train in their own arts. And that's kind of where that started. And that guy decided to close the school. We had built up to, 40, 50 people at this point. And now it's like, well, hey, I never set out to open a martial arts school. It was never even on my radar.
Okay.
I just wanted dudes to train with, right? And then it just became like, well, we got this nice thing going here. Well, how do we continue this if the school's going to close, right? So then I just took a leap of faith, and I'm like, I'm going to open the school. I'm going to take it over. And I took it over, and was still working full time as a cop, and didn't really have any other instructors with me except one or two that could fill in from time to time. But I basically taught every single class. And at the same time this is happening, the UFC is becoming more popular, so people are seeing it that way. But we still faced great resistance within law enforcement. We would have our pockets of people that wanted to train, but it wasn't until there was a series of critical incidents in Connecticut, several of which where police officers were killed, and our tactical teams all would converge on these mutual aid calls. And this is pre-YouTube, pre-Instagram, pre-MySpace didn't even exist. Like, this was like, we still had flip phones and pagers if they called us, right? And we would end up at some of these calls, and none of the teams knew each other. Nobody knew each other. It wasn't like now where everybody's friendly, right? They just literally didn't know the team next to you. So after some of those events, particularly one in Newington when Peter Lavery was killed, we went back to our police department, and our chief asked, hey, did you guys have everything you needed? And we're like, well, our gear kind of sucks, this, that. And they made a conscious effort to fix everything, right? And then at the same time, one of our bosses is Brian Royce. He was a sergeant of our team when I first got on. He had done a little challenge for us as a team where he's like, hey, for the month of June for training, we're going to compete against each other. So you're going to have a handgun course, rifle course, sniper course, physical fitness test. You're going to do a written test. You're going to do scenarios with sims, and we're going to grade you on everything, the whole team, and you're going to go head to head against each other in singular events. And we're gonna see where the chips fall, because all you guys think you're tough. Let's see who the best is, right? So they kind of let us all do that. They never really posted the results too much, other than the top three. And
but everybody knew. But everybody
the top
knew.
Three ended up being the people in our group that we basically said, hey, this is. So that our team got buy-in pretty quickly. Like, these guys know what they're doing, right? So from that point, we asked hey, could we maybe do this again next year and invite another team and go team versus team? And they're like, the boss was like, I don't want nothing to do with that. I just did this fun for us, right? So after these series of critical incidents, and none of the teams knew each other, we brought it up again. It was the end of 2004, going into 2005, when we brought it to our command staff, and we're like, hey, listen, we're not going to let this SWAT challenge idea go. Can we maybe revisit this again? And they're like, if you're going to do it, you're not just going to invite one team, invite everybody. Because our idea was just, hey, let's just invite like two teams near us, and we'll have fun. We'll cook some hot dogs and call it a day. And our chief's like, if you're going to do it. Invite everybody. So our first year, we had 12 teams. And it was 2005.
Wow.
And they came from all over the state of Connecticut. And then the next year, we had 18. And now they're running 40 teams. We still run it 26 years later. Or 20 some odd years later. It'll be 21, I'm sorry. 21 years. I'm going back to when we did it, our original one too. And I was part of putting that together. So the jiu-jitsu started to explode there as well, because one of the events on the first day is what they refer to as the Top Cop, where all the individual officers can enter and do a handgun shoot, rifle shoot, PT test. And in that PT test, we have a station where they have to grapple people. And myself and my students would be out there on the mat, and as they came to our station, we would roll and grapple with them. And that's how it spread through the SWAT community in Connecticut, because they all went back and said, these dudes killed us. Like, there was nothing.
They just manhandled us.
We could do, and they're totally relaxed, and they're controlling us, and we can't get away from them. And that's when the SWAT community bought into what we were doing. And then years later, as body cams came out, then I was able to kind of petition the state, because now it's not just guys that like us saying this. Here's the footage. Here's camera footage of our stuff being done live in the street against resisting people, and it's working, and it looks just like we do in training for the most part. Meanwhile, you guys have been teaching stuff for 25 plus years, and there isn't one body cam worn footage video of any of the material you teach other than compliant handcuffing being shown. And here we have 50, 60, 70 videos of body locks, of single legs, of arm pries, of, using the cruiser to pin somebody and take them down, and bundles from the back. I mean, we're doing this on a daily basis. And I was in some busy units. We got experience doing it. And we were able to prove, like, hey, this is not just friends of ours that like this, that we like to do this on the side. We can prove it to you on the mat. We can prove it to you with the footage. And that's when they said, hey, you might have something here.
Man, there's so much in there. When I think about building, I think the word that comes to mind is tribe. And you start with the small group of guys, it kind of grows a little bit. Then you have these other tribes, right, from these other agencies, and you're bringing them together to compete against one another. We're all friendly on the street, but here we compete, right? And so you got tribes from all over coming. They form a little larger tribe. People get to get better. They get to meet people. They get to see and be more specifically, I think the word is exposed, like the people going through the SWAT challenge and having to, it's 3 guys out on the mat for the entire 18 teams or whatever. These guys are rolling with every single person coming through, and they're getting dominated every single time. And there's got to be something to this. And that doesn't happen, I think you mentioned it earlier, until you're actually exposed to it, until you actually see the shit that I got taught doesn't work here. Or I was never taught any of this. Like, what do these guys know that I don't know, kind of thing. So it's that exposure piece. And you mentioned, the sort of different things. There were some primary pillars of things that are important there. But like, what happens when you're on the ground? What happens if you're bringing weapons to the game? What does that look like? And the weirdest part about all this for me, when I look at how any kind of training is put out there specifically through law enforcement is like, who thought this was a good idea? Number one. And number two, why are we not changing our mind about what's really happening out there? And why does it take something like this, which is hard work, right? And it's outside of the norm. It's outside of the typical. Why does it take something like this to get people to kind of understand and get exciting? And to your point, if it's not happening in the second smallest state in the union, right? Like, how the hell is it gonna, if it's not happening there, how the hell is it gonna get out to everybody else? So there's another transition here, and maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but at some point there's a transition from you into the state academy. Am I correct?
Correct.
With this, like, so it started out as you're getting your hand slapped, then there's these competitions happening, then there's some people asking questions, the group grows a little bit, the school gets started, then ultimately it's like, we need somebody to be teaching this at a higher level, and now you're going to get your hands on everybody that comes through, and they're all going to be a part of this program. How did that happen? Okay,
so I got to go back a little bit. So when I first started teaching and my chief started letting me do it, I was a very young officer with only a couple of years on. I started having periodically throughout the year, every 3-4 months, I would have a police training jiu-jitsu day, where at my jiu-jitsu school, which was at the time not even my school, I was borrowing somebody else's school. And I continued that through my career, where every 2, 3, 4 times a year, I would put it out. At first, it was literally flyers with the numbers you rip off the bottom. Do you remember those? Yeah. And I would literally hand deliver them to all the police departments and meet up car to car and give them a stack, and they would put them on their roll call boards. And that's literally how we started getting people to show up. And it was free. And then if I did one near winter time, like Christmas, I would say, bring an unwrapped toy. That's your entrance fee. And then we would give it to a charitable donation that does, for kids.
Toys for Tots kind of thing. Yeah.
It's called Blue Angels Foundation, actually, run by this retired Manchester cop, Bernie Hallam's, who's a great guy. So we started off doing that, and I called it the Officer Survival Series, because I was like, you know what, we're going to teach officers to survive, and we're going to do a series of these things throughout the year. So we'll call it Officer Survival Series. And that's how the name came, the name came. And then as I did those throughout the year, I was still teaching the more formal classes at the academy, and this wasn't like an every week thing. This was multiple times a year, where they have like a arrested control instructor class at the state, and they would have me come in, and I would come in for a day or two in that class and teach the ground. And then I would, ride off into the sunset. And then they would go back to learning the rest of the whatever they were learning at the time, which I kind of had a problem with a lot of it. I would stick around sometimes and help, but because it was kind of like caught between a rock and a hard place. Because on the one hand, if I didn't show up there and operate under their flag, I couldn't teach cops in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But if I do go there, I started to feel like, well, I'm selling snake oil. You know what I mean? Like, at least the stuff I was teaching was not, but I'm kind of hanging out there and I'm seeing a lot of the stuff they're being taught. And I know like, this isn't going to work when the pressure hits. Right. So as time went by and as I got a little more mature and older, I started to have a falling out with the people that ran that program. But they had total control over the state. It was like basically a policy in the state. That's the only thing that could be taught. And I was a guest, teaching my part. And I got to a point right around 2016 where I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. So my school had gotten quite big at that time. Now, I've got 500 students in my jiu-jitsu school. So I was like, at this point, I'm like, I'm going to teach the cops that want to come to me. And I'm not going to be part of these classes anymore because I can't bring myself and signing off on instructors when they train for X number of days. They don't train all the time. And we're teaching them like a lot of stuff that is just pointless. So I walked away from it. And when I walked away from it, other agencies started to contact me. Connecticut State Police, Hartford Police, Manchester Police, West Hartford Police, West Haven Police, Department of Environmental Protection. A bunch of these agencies that knew of me and trained a lot with me started hounding me. And they're like, one guy in particular out of Hartford, Jimmy Campbell, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. And then another guy out of Manchester, judo black belt, Dave Roy. And they independently, not even knowing the other person, they're like hounding me all the time. Hey, you got to do something. You got to put together a program. And I'm like, well, why does it have to be me? You know what I mean? And they're like, no, you're the guy to do it. You're the guy to do it. So I started thinking about it. I started putting some notes together. And then I started like, what should be in a use of force thing? And I went through my whole career, all the divisions I've been in, all the things I've experienced. And I talked to other like-minded people that I knew. And we kind of compared notes. And I put together this, 8-day officer survival series program. And we called it de-escalation through confidence, meaning that, the more confident you are in your abilities, the better chance you'll even have at de-escalating something. You're probably less likely to even use force if you're well confident and aware of what you're doing and aware of the surrender. You don't lose your temper as much and all those kinds of things. But yet at the same time, if it does go to that, you're well prepared for it, right? So I started to put that together, and we ran a few trial classes with a couple of different smaller, a couple of different agencies. And from that point, they all loved it. And COVID hit. And I had done a class right before COVID. And then when COVID hit, and they were sending their people to me, and the class wasn't even post-certified yet. And I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to certify an instructor, but post has not signed off on this course. And I had several chiefs tell me, I don't care. I'm not sending my guys to a class that I don't believe in anymore. Oh. And I want them to get proper training. And, one guy actually said, he's like, hey, have you ever used I thought it was the weirdest example ever. He's like, do you use a stapler at work? I'm like, yeah. He said, are you post-certified in it? I'm like, well, no. He's like, all right, then we don't have to be post-certified in every damn thing. As long as it fits case law and it's reasonable, you can do it. He said, people come on the job that have experience as wrestlers. They take someone down with a double. It's not in the curriculum for the state. They don't get in trouble, right? As long as they do it at the right moment, right? So they kind of jumped on with me even before it was certified. And then I took the COVID time instead of, my schools are closed. I don't know if we're going to open again. Right. Everything is tough. And I just opened my second location, and I was right around, retirement time. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this time. I don't know how long I'm going to be closed, and I'm going to really bang this out. So I put it all on paper and put a bunch of video, evidence of what we do. And I submitted it to the academy, and I fully expected a denial stamp within, a month. And to my surprise, about 3 weeks after I sent it, they wrote back and said, approved. And they called me.
Probably the best thing they'd ever seen.
Yeah. And I went down there. I did a full demonstration for them, showed them all the body cam footage, did a full presentation of what we're going to do in the class, which there's a lot to the class. It's not just, physical on the mat. And there was some other help here because the old guard that was basically holding the old way in position. A lot of them had retired and had been replaced with newer people that were more open to change. And the old guard grew up watching Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and that was their vision of martial arts, right? And the new crowd grew up watching MMA.
UFC.
And so I was able to convince them a lot more, because the old crowd was like, we're not teaching cops to be cage fighters. And I'm like, well, no, but we're going to teach them similar ideas that will work in this environment under our use of force laws and with our equipment. It just have to be tweaked, right? So that's kind of how I got it into the state. And then once I got certified through Post, I ran the classes out of my academy at first. I have a pretty large academy. And then it got too big for there. And then the Connecticut State Police signed me for a contract, and I did it. I'm going on 4th year with them, and we got 3 more to go. So it's a pretty good, and then hopefully it'll continue. And they brought me in and the Connecticut State Police, if you don't know much about them, they're highly organized and professional agency, but they're also like their own entity. And to break into them and allow them to have you come in is not common, right? So they brought me in, I taught the class, they put tons of troopers in it, and then all the municipal cops would show up as well, and it really took off. 5-star reviews, we put hundreds and hundreds of people through. Every single person loves it. And then we ended up doing it at the academy, and then all the different academies started using it. Hartford Police, Stamford Police, Waterbury, New Britain, New Haven, Bridgeport, all these different agencies now that run academies are running our program. And the Police Officer Standards and Training Council, which does all the municipal officers, that's where Bill works, they adopted it as well. Before he even worked there, they adopted it. So that's how it got into the system, and now it's the only system really taught in Connecticut, with the exception of there's a couple satellite academies that are very, very small that run Gracie Survival Tactics, but I think every single other one runs ours.
So again, so many things there in terms of the pushing forward. Few things happen unexpectedly, hit you in the side of the head. COVID gives you a little space to put some time and effort into it. You have other people that have recognized what you brought to the table. They're kind of pushing you, so you got a little bit of extrinsic, push on that end. There's also probably the extrinsic. I don't know if, like, I just opened my second school and I might be going bankrupt here. So because we're having to be shut down. So there's that pressure as well. Things are being formed here. And the other part of that pressure is getting it into the state curriculum and in it being kind of this tight-knit community of whatever, old guard plus we have layers, whether they're old guard or not kind of people. We have layers of things that maybe things move a little bit slower, and because they're trying to protect things, whatever else. There's a lot of stuff there. But the fact that you're now in these other agencies, this brings me back to the word tribe and the concept of that. And so now you're building a tribe of instructors. And that is a thing that I think is, once somebody gets something going, whatever kind of business it is, the immediate thought is expansion. Right? Like, how do I do more of this, make more money, influence more people? Even if the intention is like, I just want to help more people, people get caught maybe in some dangerous situations where they're pushing people through, and it's like, hey, just go through this. We'll tick some boxes, make sure you've got your certification, then we'll send you out. And we all know what happens oftentimes in those cases. But given your experience and what you're doing now, I want to talk a little bit about the instructor piece and the instructor certification, what that looks like for you. Because if anybody that knows about OSS or has done any amount of research knows that the I don't know if you call it this or not, but the cadre of people that are there are longtime martial arts people as well as law enforcement officers. And so they have this inside, and they're coming at it, and a lot of them have been around during the transition of like what DT was, what UFC or MMA started to look like. They had maybe been very into one discipline and now have adopted several to then come together to make this thing. Let's talk about the state of instruction, specifically in combatives or defensive tactics and law enforcement. What's been happening, what you're doing that's different, and what needs to happen in the future for this thing to turn a corner, and so that more people are adopting programs and systems, if you want to call it that, like yours.
Sure. So going back to when the state approved it, one of the only things that they that they really kind of like stopped and said, hey, wait a second, we're going to approve this. We think it looks really good. But do you have any, can you bend a little bit on your regulations for who can become an instructor? And I'm like, no, I'm not bending. And they're like, well, it's going to be really, because my rules were this. In my proposal, I said, hey, currently across the country, probably the globe, it's typical in law enforcement that a class comes out, let's just say defensive tactics instructor, you can put whatever name to it you want. And some are 5 days, some are 10 days, somewhere in that range, okay? And a police department puts that out to their people, and someone in the police department reads it and says, hey, I want to be a defensive tactics instructor. And the overwhelming majority of those people, while probably good intentioned, either want it as a resume builder, or they want to be able to get out of patrol a couple days a month so they can teach DT, or there's overtime for DT. I don't know, whatever their reason for doing it isn't always in the best interest of those they want to instruct. It sometimes is self-fulfilling to themselves so that they have something to talk about on an oral board, right? And I said, I will not certify anyone to be an instructor under my name unless they can prove to me under pressure on the mat that they train and train consistently and they know how to navigate the water. Okay, I'm not going to do it. So if someone wants to come to the 8 days and they have zero background in this or very limited background, they're going to get better. We're going to basically take a spotlight and shine on different areas of use of force. And they're probably going to see, wow, I'm pretty good at striking, but I suck at the clinch, or I don't know how to put a tourniquet on, or I don't know how to testify in court, whatever, right? That we're going to shine some lights on some different areas. And it should be a awakening to them in those 8 days of where their weakness is, okay? If you have somebody that comes to the class and they wrestled 4 years in college and they do jiu-jitsu and they're a purple belt, I'll certify that person, okay, once I see and feel their abilities. So I want to see them on the mat. I want to see the way they move. I want to get in there and grapple with them and roll with them and feel their pressure and see how they can adjust the pressure like a volume control, and understand that how that they can scale what they know, and that their ego is not through the roof, or they're going to hurt people and they're going to try to prove themselves too much and hurt people in class. And I want to see that they're well-rounded. They can explain what they're doing. And if they can do all those things, I will sign off on them as an instructor. If they can't do those things, I will give them 6 months of free jiu-jitsu training at either of my schools. And then we have affiliates set up throughout the state where they can go and train. And when they get up to, so let's say someone zero background, the favorite child gets sent from the police department. They go to the class. Mm-hmm. They don't have any background. They go to the 8 days. They really love it. They're like, I want to do this. We send them to some school. They get 6 months for nothing to show up and train, right? At the end of that 6 months, they've gotten a lot better in conjunction with the class. And when that instructor decides, whether it's me or one of my other instructors, they decide, you know what, Rob, they are drastically improved. They understand the material. When I ask them questions, they can explain why. Okay, I can feel that they've gotten better. Then we just upgrade their certificate. I don't charge them. I just say, hey, you did the work. Congratulations, here you are. Now you got to maintain it. Okay, so that's kind of what we did. And the state's like, well, hey, listen, people aren't going to send people if they can't get certified. I said, okay, well, don't send them. And then he's like, well, yeah, don't you want to do this? I said, listen, if no one ever signs up for this class, I will shrug my shoulders, put my gi or my rash guard back on, and go train at my school. If they decide to come, we will make them better as a team. And they said, okay. And they took it. So now currently,
so it's not in
the state of Connecticut, if you want to be certified as an Officer Survival Series instructor, you have to be able to show us that you have trained and you are at least what I would refer to as a blue belt or higher. You don't have to have a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. You could have wrestled 4 years at Springfield College, right? And you took 6 months of jiu-jitsu and you came to the class. That's probably going to be more than enough. Okay. All right. That's more than enough. Now I've failed blue belts. I've had people come that were blue belts and I failed them because you know what? They can show me 16 entries to Ashigarami, but they can't clinch off a punch and get somebody against the wall and take them down. Right. So that's rare. Most of the people that come through are pretty good, but once in a while I fail somebody that says they have experience, but if they don't have the experience, we're not going to pass them, because I look at it like this. let's just play, I don't know, a sport that I don't play, tennis. I've never played tennis in my life. If you said to me, hey, Rob, I'm going to send you to this class for 2 weeks with the best tennis instructors in New England, and they're gonna come in, state of the art facility, all the equipment. They're gonna teach you the rules. They're gonna teach you the game. They're gonna teach you the drills. They're gonna teach you all this, right? And then at the end of the 2 weeks, you're a certified tennis coach. And now, by the way, you're gonna prepare this group of people to go play in Wimbledon. Like, that's not happening. I'm not good enough. I don't have the reps. I don't have the time and grade and answering questions and feeling the pressures of grappling or whatever the sport is or the activity is. And the only way that we're going to make the officers that in the field believe in what we're teaching is if the people passing it on actually know what they're doing. Because,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what you're doing is you're making them earn it. And again, this just goes back to tribe. You said, you failed people, but the way I look at that is like, that's when the real opportunity exists. Like you failed, okay, but what does that mean for you? You're going to go to 6 months of training with somebody that has been through the exact same thing that you've been through or more, right? Because they're coming in a little less experienced or they lack certain skills. And we're going to give you the opportunity to do these things. And if you really want it, you can have it. You just have to put in the work. So it's do the work to earn the certificate, right? If that's the thing that you're really chasing. But I would imagine somewhere along the line there, they recognize that it's much bigger than the certificate, because then they get to say, and they get to be a part of this tribe of people that are really making the difference out there. And everybody knows when they walk into the room who hasn't earned that and who has. And so that sets a stage for having an expectation on a level of accountability that I don't want to say manages itself, because there has to be somebody like you in front of it going, no, not good enough. Or, you have to be able to trust a couple of other people to say, nope, not good enough, Rob. No, I would never let this happen. You made me do way more work than this guy has done to get to where I'm at, and he should have to do the same. And that's not a bad thing. And I don't hate the guy, but he's not ready. And there's this internal, I don't know what the word is, but like there's an energy that exists there that it's not a box ticking session. It's not that at all. There's stuff that has to be done. And once you've arrived right at meeting the minimum standard, you also realize your journey is just beginning now. In order to continue to do this, you have to continue to train. And if you're not right doing that, that's going to be exposed and you're going to be called out on it. And that is the thing that is lacking when I talk to so many folks in training units across the country. That is the thing that they complain the most about. It's like, well, the first thing is like, we need to equip these people to do the thing that we're expecting them to do, that we expect them to do, and that the public expects them to do. And the second part is like, if we don't do that, then what are we setting ourselves up for? And how do I look myself in the mirror at the end of the day, knowing that I sent somebody out with a certification or a tick on the box, knowing that they're unprepared, they are not ready for this. And that's not something an department I don't think should be managing. I think it's the folks inside like an agency that are inside these programs that should be managing that. And the best way to do that is to have that internal sense of you are part of something that's bigger than you. And yes, there are people that kind of oversee this or are in charge of this, but it's not me making all the calls. It's the people that you're working with. They make those calls. We confer together. We all talk. It's not one dude doing this. And unfortunately, I think in the institution of law enforcement leadership, that ends up where the finger ends up getting pointed, because it's often the person because there is one person that's saying yes or no versus a collective that is saying yes or no. That to me is interesting. And I think that's the thing that most people are searching for. Like, they just want to be part of something that makes sense and is good. It's good. And like, we can all say like, no, we're doing the right thing. There's plenty of room for improvement here, but what we're doing is good. And we all believe in this thing moving forward. And that, going back to your experience and how you kind of got there, and the holding the line with nope, you can send a guy, right? But that doesn't mean he's going to pass, which then puts the onus on the person that's going to pass, right? And so they have to do that work. So there's an intrinsic motivation there.
There's a couple
versus
things that
just showing
it's
up.
Not that I don't fail them from the class. There's 5 levels. Level 1 means you went to the class, you participated, you passed the class as a student. You You didn't get thrown out. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay. And we're allowing you to continue training with us, but you're just not an instructor. Okay. Level 2 would be like a blue belt. Okay. You know enough that you can show the guy at in-service, hey, this is how you do this or that or whatever. But I'm not sending you out to run a major course or to train people at an academy.
Gotcha.
Right. Level 3 is a purple. Level 4 is a brown. Level 5 is a black belt. But even then, level 5, just because you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, that isn't just it. You need to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, at least 5 years as a cop full time. You need to have TAC medical, simunition instructor, use of force. There's all these things, firearms instructor, and very few people can get that, right? So to get that level of instructorship is tough. The other thing too is, when people come to the class, like the last class I did, we have another one starting soon, but the last class we just finished, there was 40 some odd people in the class, 6 people left with an instructorship.
Okay.
6.
So it's a less common thing.
Oh yeah,
like to be an instructor.
And you know what?
So again,
we have actually that was a smaller class. Sometimes we're around 10 or 11, right? We'll be anywhere between 40 and 50 in a class. But we have now the agencies know. The agencies know. Oh shit, we want to send somebody this. Okay, I might not like Frank. He might not be my best friend, but he's a jiu-jitsu purple belt and he does a good job as a cop. I'm sending him to the class. And now we have some level of control who's going out there and teaching, because we're kind of almost forcing the hand of the police departments to send the people that best suited for it. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
And then, a lot of this falls in line with the Combatives Association. So I started doing this long before I even was part of that. But one of the things that drew me to the Combatives Association or Combatives University with Matt Larsen and all those guys is that when I started to see what they were doing, and I went down there and I trained with them many times, and of course I've known Craig forever and the guys from Knife Control Concept and all those guys. And I'm a black belt under Matt Larsen in the guild, as they call it. And what I liked about it was it's very much in conjunction with like what we're doing. If it's in order to get a black belt from him in this, you have to not only be jiu-jitsu black belt, but you have to show fighting experience against others of your rank, where video proof that you won. You have to be able to shoot. You have to be able to lift. You have to be you have to have TAC medical. You have to have all these categories for them to say. And it can't just be Matt. Like Matt can't just say, "Oh, I like Rob," or Craig can't say, "I like Rob, so I'm going to give him this." No, the whole guild votes.
Right. It would be a violation of the integrity if it was just one person making that decision. It's interesting you were bringing up those things you said, like TAC medical. You mentioned earlier about understanding use of force policy laws. I know there's a lot into this program, and Bill covered it very high level. We were just talking about kind of how things are integrated, but the things that people would think, right? That you go to the gym, you go to the school. This is what we learn. We're rolling. We're getting hands on. But there's so much other stuff about this. You mentioned confidence, right? Confidence and the ability to handle situations. I think it was de-escalate. Sorry, what was it? It was de-escalation
through confidence.
Through confidence. So how do I know when to apply what? Right? When's the right timing to do this? But then also, how do I defend myself in court, right? When this comes up, because it's going to come up. If you go hands-on, there's use of force. It's probably going to court, and you're probably going to have to talk about it. So there's all these other layers that go into it. It's not just the grappling or the combatives and the fighting piece. It's not just the competition there. Maybe that's not the right word, but you're forcing people to compete, on a regular basis in the gym. But at the same time, there's these other aspects that get brought into it on the law enforcement side. Like, hey, there's all the other things you're going to need to know. It's not good enough just to be a BJJ black belt, as you were saying, right? There's so many other things that come into this, and the tools, the weapons integration and manipulation, what's happening when you go hands-on. They're a big part of this program in that the quote-unquote belt system, the level system that you're going through here, includes those pieces. How much of that stuff are they getting in that spotlight session when they come the first time versus how much do they get? How is that organized through the rest of the levels?
Yeah, so there's 2 tiers to the class. Each one is 8 days, and then there's some specialty courses. Like we will give instructorships for like pepper spray, right? Or a baton, that, which I hate to do, but the state requires that they have to have it. So that's something that we will run, and I hate running it, but it's like a necessary evil. That's different. But I'm talking about defensive tactics. Arrest and control is separate in Connecticut from those things, and that's your hands-on grabbing, putting people in custody, that kind of things, use of force type stuff. So when they come to the first tier of class, they learn basics of striking, clinching, takedowns, groundwork, and weapons entanglements. Okay, we do team tactics, we do vehicle extractions, including ATVs. Like, who teaches you to rip somebody off of an ATV or a dirt bike? Not too many people, but we have tons of problems with ATVs and dirt bikes, right? So we do a session on that. We have doctors come in, trauma surgeons that come in. We have doctors from Harvard, Yale, and UConn Health Center, all the major hospitals in the New England region that are like top of the food chain hospitals. Those doctors have not only come in and help with that, but it's been reviewed. They've reviewed our curriculum and all that stuff to make sure that we didn't miss something from a medical point of view of what we're doing to people in the street, right? We have we have a team of attorneys that try police cases for a living. That's what they do. They teach the use of force. They teach all the testimony. We have scenarios, because you can basically learn all these movements and concepts on a mat and go against each other on the mat. That's not that hard to learn, quite honestly, right? To teach it is harder, but to learn it enough for yourself in those 8 days is not that difficult. The problem becomes for cops, and I worked IA for a few years, is cops don't get in trouble for what they do. They get in trouble for doing it at the wrong moment. Okay, so we take a lot of time in the class, and we do scenarios with role players where they have to physically show up at a call in their stuff and talk to people and interact with people. And our scenarios are not designed so that everyone's a shootout. That's very rare, actually. Okay, our scenarios are either going to be, hey, if you say and do the right things and treat people with the right dignity and respect, they're probably going to come with you, right? If you, depending on what you say in some scenarios, they may or may not. And there's always going to be one or two, it's a fighting class, there's always going to be one or two scenarios where, you know what, no matter what you do, they ain't coming, right? And they decide in the moment, hey, should I be using force or should I not be using force? We take those, we record them, the attorneys watch them, and then we can't have everyone in the class testify because it's just too many people, but the entire class shows up on the last day, huge auditorium, big screen, the attorneys are all there in their suits, and they have already picked people that are going to testify. They have to write reports about their force. Their video is shown to the class. They sit up there on the stand, just like in court, and they get cross-examined and direct examined by trained attorneys that do trial cases that can put them under pressure, just like you need to feel the pressure of someone mounting you and trying to rip your gun off or putting a tourniquet on someone as they're screaming. You have to feel the pressure of a trained attorney asking all the questions that they know the answers to and manipulating your words. Those are things that very few classes, I don't know of another class that does that in a class. And we do that. Okay, so we have a psychologist come in, teach them all about the stress that they're facing on the job and PTSD and the EMDR and all the therapy that they can receive, and we explain to them how jiu-jitsu can even help with that a little bit, right? So we have all these elements. We have people come in and teach them about how to recognize the autistic population, people with special needs, so that when they're in a use of force call and they show up and this person's acting different than what normal people just act like, it might not be that they're messing with them. They might have a situation going on, and there's signs that they can look for that might, and de-escalatory measures that they can take that they've learned in the class that might help assist them in calming this person down, right? So there's a lot to it. It's not just, hey, we're going to do a clinch and take the person down. And then we have an entire second tier where we bring in medics to teach about chemical restraint and soft restraints. And we have long gun combatives with rifles and all kinds of things.
So I wonder how much of that was involved in the original program writing that you submitted to the state versus how much of that is now evolved. Obviously, It's going to evolve as new tools are brought to the situation, new technologies, things like that, and new knowledge is found or discovered. But I wonder how much of that existed at the get-go versus where we are now.
It was pretty much all in there, with the exception of I've added the canine team stuff the last few years in our second tier. We created the second tier. I didn't just want, like, people are like, oh, make a level 2 or a tier 2. I'm like, listen, I'm not just going to make a second class and rebrand it with another name and show you the same shit I already showed you. Like, I'm not here to like rip people off. If I have material that I think is valuable that we can add to this, I will. So we created that second tier after the fact, and that included the rifle combatives and the canine stuff, and we bring in our Inspector General's office. That's the other thing we do. So in Connecticut, the Inspector General's office is in charge of investigating any deadly force situation that involves police officers.
Wow.
And
Okay.
their unit, all their investigators, their judge, everybody, I have met with all of them. I have shown all that we do to them. They've agreed to what we're doing, especially the in-fight weapon access and in close fighting and shooting, where deadly force is applied. And they actually come to the class. They do a whole presentation for the officers of, hey, if our unit shows up, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what we're looking for. This is what's going to get you jammed up. This is what's not going to get you jammed up. And they go right through. They don't give them secrets that are, they just tell them this is the way it is. This is the law. This is what we're going to do, and they do it. And so we have that whole other element. So the very attorneys that would defend them or prosecute them, the very doctors and all that would review that. These are all the people that are part of the class. Because one thing that I saw in defensive tactics classes, and I still see it to this day, is you'll have people that say own a company that trains cops, and they have this mentality that they know everything, and it's like that they're going to be the magic person that teaches every element of this class, right? And it's like, that's not possible. You're not really giving them good training. I'm not a lawyer. I can't get up there and give use of force like Steve Palmer or attorney like Spector can. There's no way I can do that. These guys are. I'm not a trauma surgeon. I've put tourniquets on in the street, but I'm not a doctor. Like, you want them to show you, right? And we have the experts in their field show this. I'm basically the conductor. So the orchestra is in front of me. I can't play every individual instrument, but I can conduct them, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm trying to give the officers the best training I can.
Yeah, so you're leveraging so many things. I wonder how much of this, to me, this should be all taught at the academy level. But I understand there's time restrictions. People have to learn a lot. It's kind of like you're an undergrad there, or you're almost in prep school, right? And then there needs to be like some undergrad work that happens, and then there's some graduate work that happens after that. It needs to be, I think law enforcement could shift. I heard a guy's name's Joshua Coleman. He's out here on the West Coast with the California Force Instructors Association, and he said it needs to become a bit more academic. And the only way to law enforcement in general, and the only way to do that is to bring in outside resources that are academics at some level, in some cases, and experts, in order to be able to decipher the information and deliver it in a way that makes sense and provides the value that you mentioned. So I wonder, like, how much do they get of any of this stuff in the academy versus when they come to school? Because we've been talking about, I want to make sure I'm being clear here, or I'm clear here. We're talking about the levels for instruction that happen, and then they go back and they can teach this stuff or put this stuff together outside in their own schools, or this is strictly happening at the state level. Everybody comes together in one place after they go through the academy, or how much of this is happening in the academy?
Okay, so I run the classes that I teach personally, and my cadre of instructors that we'll show up with 20 black belts and teach this class. Like, this isn't just me showing. There's a whole bunch of us, okay? And the room is packed. And we're teaching current certified police officers from wherever they want to come from to come to the class. They're already through the academy. They've already been on the road. We've had people come through that graduated 6 months ago. We've had people with 30 years in the job come through. And the average person probably has 8 or 9 years on the job that comes through our courses, okay? And the people that leave the course with instructor certifications can go back, the few of them that do, can go back and teach at their PDs or help out the police academy, or they can run a lot of them. We have affiliates, a system for OSS where martial arts schools can become part of the affiliation, and their owners can come through our class, and we vet them, and we put them on our website, and we funnel people to go train with them after they graduate the academy or come through our class. So the regular police academies, the main ones in the state are the Connecticut State Police, which do all the troopers, and the Police Officer Standards and Training, which is where Bill works. They're both housed in the same building in Meriden, Connecticut. Okay. And Post certifies everyone. So even CSP is certified by Post, but they hold their own academy. It's more of a U.S. Marine boot camp type mentality there. Okay.
Gotcha.
And then Post has discipline, but not as much as the state police does. Okay. And both of those programs for defensive tactics vary greatly, because Post allows, I think they only have like 30 hours, 24 or 30. I'd have to look it up on the website. It's on the website. It's like 24 or 30 hours of hands-on defensive tactics training. That's not including baton, taser, pepper spray, stuff like that. But it's just like hand-to-hand, what we refer to as martial arts or grappling. They have very limited training in that. State police does like 100 hours. so
really?
they go
Wow.
way above and beyond. Hartford police does a lot. They have their own satellite academy. New Haven police is another city. They do their own thing. They add more. Waterbury does a lot. Waterbury PD is probably one of the better police departments in the state running this kind of thing. They're excellent. And then Stanford, and all of those places have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts running the classes. So whereas when I first started this program, no black belts were teaching in Connecticut. They were all working somewhere, but they weren't the instructors. And now, because of the steps we've taken with instructorships, all these academies are being run by people that train, okay, and that are very good at what they do. So the academies are running our program. They run as much of it as they can in whatever hours they're allowed. So state police get quite a bit. Hartford gets quite a bit. Waterbury gets quite a bit. But post, Bill's trying to change it. And Andre, they're doing a really good job. And everyone that goes through the academy says it's amazing. But they're only given X number of hours. And they have to battle with what they're going to show.
So I think the major takeaway from me on this, and thank you for clarifying that, because I was having a little bit of trouble putting the pieces together with regard to like when would I actually get an opportunity as an officer to get exposed to this outside of my basic academy of training. And you differentiated there between what might be a municipal post versus what's the state. That's important. That's an important distinction. But I think the major takeaway for me is that this has to come from the outside. It has to be influenced from the outside. You have to bring people in from the outside and start this momentum of then bringing it back inside. The being dependent on an academy or even like the agency in and of itself to provide this, to somehow come up with its own curriculum, right? To get it quote unquote certified, whatever that means for wherever you are in the country or world for that matter. And to expect that you're going to have quality instructors doing that in all these places, and that you can house all that inside your small agency or large agency for that matter, that's a challenge, right? And I honestly, if that worked, then we'd be great, right, as a law enforcement industry. But we're not. And so what you walked me through there was this entire time is where it started, how it was all kind of paralleling, and now how it's being integrated back. That's a long journey, dude. Like that takes some serious work, and it's imperative that people wake up and understand that is what this is going to take to get this outside influence in there. And you have to be open to it. There has to be a little luck, right? There has to be a little bit of agreement. There has to be some introspective work, like, oh, I just got manhandled by this dude. Maybe I don't know all the things, right? There's all of these steps in this process that I've heard you walk through. And you mentioned, again, I work in a small state, so maybe it's a little easier to influence because we're a little tighter, or it's maybe the control mechanisms are actually aiding you here. I don't know, but I guess the question in all this is I know there's other folks out there. You got like Craig doing it. You've got you doing it. You've got Matt who's doing it. On the military side of things, on the Army side of things. Who else out there is doing a good job with this? Because you're in Connecticut, man. Like there's 49 other states out there that and some of them in some areas are doing probably a really good job, and others not. But it's not as integrated. Who's doing a good job at influencing this and helping to kind of pave this change that is happening, but needs to happen or continue to happen?
So I know most of the companies doing this. I know a lot of the people personally that are doing this. Some I don't know, but I know who they are. Yep. And I would have to say that of the ones that I try to surround myself with, some are not going to be household names, but they do a lot of training for cops. They're just not as well known on Instagram, for example.
That's exactly what I'm asking you. I want to know who those people are.
It's like there's like garage bands out there, like the future Metallicas of the world that just no one knows they exist.
The great ones.
There's a guy in Massachusetts. His name is Dan Simler, and he's a Grafton mass cop. And he's a 4th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, a judo black belt. He's a police officer. He was, had a long, outstanding grappling and MMA career. And he's a super, super high level instructor. And he is one of the up and coming instructors that I see. And he's in his 40s now. He kind of went into the job late, but he is a very good instructor. And he cares, and he wants to to pass this on to others. So he's a great source. Casey Lamont is a Mass State Trooper, and he runs the Massachusetts Police Jiu-Jitsu team, and we have a Connecticut Police Jiu-Jitsu team as well, to get cops to train Jiu-Jitsu. And I actually got that idea from Casey. So he is a phenomenal resource as well. Him and his team, and Mike Vargas and the other guys up there, they're fantastic, and they've really got a lot of people training in Massachusetts. There is CJ Delaney, 10-1 Jiu-Jitsu out of Monster MMA in Long Island, New York, is probably one of the best instructors I've ever seen. He is passionate. He's skilled. I actually competed against him in front of 10,000 people in the cage at the Mohegan Sun Arena in a grappling match, and he's a monster. But a super nice guy, and very, very good jiu-jitsu, and great instructor. Chad Lyman's a very good friend of mine. I'm very close with Chad. I talk with Chad pretty much daily, if not weekly, if not daily. We've become pretty good friends. We've trained a lot together over the years. We bounce things off of each other. Craig obviously is a good friend of mine. The guys from Knife Control Concepts, Aaron Giannetti.
I know Aaron.
I
know Aaron.
Mike Cheney. Like, these guys aren't cops, but like, they get it. They get it. So there's a lot of people out there. There's a guy, Tom Menton. He's from Minnesota, Storm Training. Like, he's really, really good. I think he's comparable to what we do in a lot of ways, because he mixes a lot of things in, and he's a very good instructor. I've trained with him before, many years ago. So there's people out there, and then there's others that I see on the internet that I've never personally met. So I can't really say are they good or they're not good. They appear to be good. On Cliff out of Hill County.
Farley.
Yeah, Farley. He's sometimes difficult to deal with on the internet.
He's a funny guy.
But he is. I've met him in person. I've trained with him in person. He's a good instructor, and he obviously knows what he's doing. So there's a lot of. The thing is, like, you're starting to see in the behind the scenes in the combatives world, you're starting to see all these groups that have private chat groups, and you're starting to see. I'm in dozens of them that people invite me to, and I can't even keep track of them all. And you're starting to see the infighting. Whereas 10 years ago, we were all on the same team trying to push this, right? And now you're starting to see the infighting behind the scenes. Oh, that guy sucks, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and what's his real experience? And you're starting to see this infighting behind the scenes. And it's really unfortunate, because at the end of the day, there's 1 million cops in the United States. There's literally about 20 to 30 of these companies doing this work. There's more than enough work for everybody, and everyone is speaking relatively the same language. You don't really see this happen in the jiu-jitsu community. I don't see people arguing at length, other black belts, about, oh, that guy he taught the arm bar. That's my way. That's the way I do the arm bar from the guard. But in the combatives world, everybody seems to think they own everything. It's like, dude, no, I didn't create a body lock. I didn't create a single leg takedown. I didn't create a wrist weave. None of us did. Like, none of us created a 2-on-1. Right. None of us created any of this shit. It has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, handed down through all various sources around the world. The first time one caveman entered another cave and tried to take their rock, the martial arts was born when physical conflict began, right? Like, no one owns any of this stuff. And I think that some people have put together a unique program with specific verbiage, such as ShivWorks. He has specific verbiage, like timing rule and, all that kind of thing, where that is specific to him, right? And there's other companies that do we have specific things that we do that I think are specific to us. But the moves themselves, like, no one owns it. But you're starting to see this in battle, and it's kind of unfortunate. I hope it straightens itself out. Next week, not next week, in 2 weeks, I'll be in Lake Tahoe, and I'll be at the Invictus camp. I'll be an instructor out there. And there'll be a lot of the top instructors from around the country will be there. And I'm actually going to talk to them about it, because some of them are the ones I see doing it. And it's like, what are we doing, guys? We should be helping each other get better, not trying to, like, outdo each other.
Yeah, it's man, that crosses over so many things. When I look at kind of like these four major components that things always get boiled down to, you got fitness, fighting, shooting, or firearms, and driving, right? Are like these basic skills that our law enforcement officers need to have, and in every one of those, you could create a business around it, right? And you can create your own curriculum around it, and you could have your own verbiage around it, and whatever else. But the reality of it is, the fundamental concepts and foundations or principles that you don't want to violate, right, and or that need to be deeply rooted, they're pretty much the same. And if you really boil it all down to that, no matter what you look at in any industry, I'm in the fitness industry, it's the same, man. Like it's exactly the same. Firearms, when you look at shooting instruction and what's going on out there, it's the same. And I'm really glad you went there, because that's where I was going. My follow-up to the who's doing a good job is like, what's not going well right now. And you highlighted it again, going back to social media. There's power in that because it puts people together. You mentioned all the chat groups that you're in and how you've been connected to people. And then there's also that opportunity for people to talk shit, right? And badmouth people and say what they don't know and make judgments. And this is what I learned when I went to Combatives Summit last year, and being in the room with a bunch of people that have the same mindset that you have, which is, why are we fighting about this? There's nobody here invented everything. And you could put, and I literally did this, I had several podcasts with different guys, some guys who had never actually been in the same room together. They had only known one another on the, through the internet. And they are all in agreement on what you just said. Every single one of them is in agreement with that. Some of the things they do, not necessarily conflict, but they might be a little bit different than somebody else. But fundamentally, it's the same stuff. It's about being process oriented, not trying to come up with a solution to a particular problem, and understanding when you need to bring certain things to the table. And I think you going out, like that's so important, that guys like you and guys that are in that group or with that same mindset are going out and actually putting themselves face to face in front of these other guys, not to fight them, but to have discussions. The internet is the absolute worst place to be trying to have a discussion. It's a good place to make a connection, but unless you're doing the face to face, or even just like what we're doing now, the message doesn't get out there. And those folks that you're talking about, that they've either decided, some of the names that you mentioned, some of them which I know and some of them I don't know, have decided, I'm too busy and I have way more important things to do than to be on the internet arguing about this shit. I would prefer to keep my circle tight, talk to the guys that I know, not because they're going to give me the answers that I want, but they're going to challenge me for, in things, and I can reach out to them, touch base with them. That's the whole point of the podcast, dude. That's one of the major reasons I wanted to have you on, is to get that message out there to maybe a different audience, to people that agree with everything you're saying. They're like, I never knew this guy existed. I never knew this was out there, but I do know this other guy that he just mentioned. And if these guys are on the same wavelength, and that's the one guy I found that where I go to for my resources and my answers, now I know there's another guy, and where there's another one, there's another one after that, and there's another one after that. And I get how it can be. You're a busy guy, dude. You're doing a lot of things. So to take time out to go somewhere else and put yourself in front of people outside your state, right? If you want to just look at it that way, like from a regional perspective, and influence people that way, I think is super important. And it's not, again, going with like, I want to have conflict with you. I agree with some things, I disagree with can we talk about it? I guess my question in that is like, you mentioned we see the infighting happen. How difficult is it in that world, in the world that you're in? Like, is this a hard thing to do, or is it just, it's an easy thing to do, but we just need to understand how to have a conversation and communicate?
I think it's an easy thing to do if you're in it for the right reasons. I think the problem is we have a lot of people out there, and again, I talk with the guys in the Combatives Association and in Invictus and other organizations that will agree with me here. I think there's some people out there that are trying to be someone versus do something positive. Okay, their goal is themselves becoming important versus raising the team together and being everyone being better. And go back to the SWAT challenge. We didn't create the SWAT challenge so that we could see somebody's hand raised, some team's hand raised at the end that they're the best team in Connecticut or wherever, because we have teams come from everywhere now. It was so that everyone could meet each other and cross-train with each other and talk to each other on the behind the scenes and compare equipment, compare tactics, and develop relationships. So now 6 months later, when you're on a mutual aid call, you know that dude. You can go talk to them. You understand each other's ways. Oh, they enter this way, we enter that way. They have this for a gear, they have this for capabilities. And I think we can do that in the combatives world. Like I don't see why we couldn't. It's just a matter of it spread out more. But why couldn't we do that? Listen. At the end of the day, you asked me if it's easy or hard. I get up every day now that I'm retired as a cop. I've been off the job now 2 years because I did my time after West Hartford, and I get up every day. 4:30 in the morning, and I come down to my school here for between 5 and 6. We have class starts at 6, and I put on a gi or a rash guard and I train jiu-jitsu. Like literally, that's what I do every day. And then several weeks, many weeks a year. Summer's a little slower because I try not to do too many classes in the summer. Like all next week, I'll be doing a class at the Connecticut Department of Corrections, where I'm doing all of their use of force instructors. I'm teaching them officer survival series. I get to do that for a living. Like, I'm fucking lucky. I drive by.
It's a pretty good gig.
I drive by people going to these things, and I see people roofing. I see people, digging holes on the side of the road.
Concrete.
You know what I mean?
Slinging concrete.
Hard job, hard labor as a teenager and a young adult before I became a cop. I worked on, shoveling chicken shit and stuff. Like, I know what hard work is, and I think, I'm fucking lucky to do what I do. And these guys got to remember, like, what do you get to do every day? A lot of people would love to do what you do. Why are you complaining?
Yeah, the other thing is like there's a million cops out there if that's who your target audience is, and they all need help. And and not all of them want it, but they all need it, and they all could use it. And I think that's the thing. You going back to the what are you doing this for? And you started that with it's about the right intentions. And getting the word out there, and then you didn't say this, but you kind of did. It's like the rising tide raises all ships. Kind of mental. Yeah, kind of capstones it all with regard to. There's so much for people to learn, and if we're in agreement, and I think most people would, what we're going to get from our government, right, in terms of training hours, dollars, resource, and even level of training. Is not where we want it. It's not where we need it, and it's going to take that kind of an attitude in order to change it. And I don't want to beat that drum too hard and like come up with a bunch of cliches or whatever, but the major purpose of having you on that show for me, these were my selfish reasons, was to have you walk through that process. Because and I've said it probably 3 times already today, it's the same process. Everybody has their individual experiences, but the things you have to go through to actually make that change, and start with the right intentions, but they're almost all the same stories, man. They're all the same. Like, I was in this situation, I saw an opportunity for me to get better. I did that. I went all in on me. Then I said, wow. Then there were other people I saw were doing that as well that wanted to help people. We started a thing, whatever it was. Again, it was like the SWAT competition for you guys. That kind of grew it a little bit. People wanted a little bit more. We were able to do this thing. It takes years. It's sometimes I'm sure you felt like you're beating your head against the wall. I mean, you even mentioned at one point, like, I'm done. Like, I'm just done with this. Like, I'm tired of beating my head against the wall. There's too many things right now. Yet there's perseverance, and then there's the keeping with that intention of, now we got to keep this going, and the feeling privileged to be able to do it versus punching in and punching out. That's a tough thing to balance. And again, going back to the guys you mentioned that maybe people know versus people that you don't know, they've all done it, and they're all doing it right at the same level. It's just some guys aren't as public about it. Doesn't mean they're not influencing as many or more people as what, the guy with, I don't know, 100,000 followers on Instagram has or whatever else. They're just doing it in a different way. And so where people go and get their information, they should be reaching out to folks like you, or paying closer attention, let's just say that, to folks like you, and listening to this to find out where they can go for those resources. Because to your point at the beginning of this, and you were saying, like, we're bringing some of this to the table, and it was really eye-opening, but at the same time, I would think some of it would feel a little bit weird, right? And that, like, what are we doing? Like, now we're bringing simunitions into like the jiu-jitsu mat, like, we've got these, rubber blades, or, like, they're going out there. What is this? This is weird. I think it's weird that you're not doing that, right? When you look at all the body cam footage that's out there, like, what if you're not doing that? I think you're weird. But I think people kind of look at it and they go, I don't want to be the weird guy. Like, I don't want to be looked at as like I'm trying to turn everybody into an MMA fighter, which is what the pushback you had gotten maybe earlier in your career. I'm on a little bit of a soapbox here, but to me, there's some obvious stuff here. And again, it's the similarities in the stories and the work that gets put into this. So question is just going to be, as we kind of wrap this up, is as you've watched things evolve and you're continuing to put in all this work and you're teaching classes elsewhere and whatnot, what are you super excited about right now? Like, you said, I get up every day, I'm in the gym at 5 a.m., right, with the gi on or the rash guard on. But outside of that, like, what's firing you? What are you excited about, like, with regard to where this type of training is going in the space that you're intimately involved in? And where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think that we've made leaps and bounds to where when I first started doing this, we didn't have the connection through the internet. Is good and bad, right? Because you go back in time, I had no way of meeting a Chad Lyman or meeting a Craig Douglas or meeting a, Dan Similar I knew because he was from our area. But unless you were involved heavily in traveling the country, you're not going to meet these people. Whereas now the internet has kind of connected a lot of us together that have mutual interests, and we've kind of made our little groups of people. And I think that's a major influence of how things have changed. When I first started this, we have to kidnap people to come to a seminar, like beg them to come, right? And now, like, we taught a few months back, we taught in Boston Police Academy, the oldest agencies in the country, and the mats were full. They couldn't fit any more people in the parking lot. So to see that growth is amazing. It gets me super excited because I'm like, you know what? Even just 8, 9, 10 years ago, you would have never had that. Things like Invictus, things like Combatives Association, things like the different police jiu-jitsu teams, those are all relatively new entities that did not exist, in my career until the very, very end. And even then, they were in the infancy stages. And I think you're starting to see people carrying those batons into the future. Listen, I'm 53 years old this year. How many more years am I going to be able to do this? I don't know. But I want to make sure that we've built a team that I can pass the baton to, and they can continue carrying it into the future and evolve, and not just get stuck. Because I think that's something that happens in the law enforcement world sometimes is, that's the way we do it, and we just keep doing it that way forever versus like change, right? So I think that there's a up and coming group of people that, like the new generation, people will complain about them, but honestly, my experience with the new generation is they have all the access to all the information way more than we did. Mm-hmm. They have a warp tunnel to go into, to start at a point where we were cutting through the freaking with a machete in the jungle and not even know if we were going the right direction. They have paved highways and they have motivated people. And the younger people I have in my school that are cops, some of them are training 5 and 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day if it's their day off. Like, they're motivated. Mm-hmm. And right now they're blue and purple belts and coming up, but eventually when they get 8, 9, 10 years as a cop and they become black belts, they'll be taking this on from me, right? And to see that being able to be handed down and grow, I think is huge. I do think that there's something I've heard recently that insurance companies may start to put pressure on police departments for this, because there's only a handful of insurance companies that pay the payouts for use of force, okay? And I've heard some behind-the-scenes scuttle that some of these insurance companies might be toying with the idea of, hey, if you guys don't provide a certain level of training, we're not going to pay. Like, almost like
that changes the game.
Imagine if a day comes where an insurance company says, if your cops don't train X number of hours per month and they get into a situation and the situation could have been avoided with this type of training, it's null and void. We're not paying.
It's coming out of your pocket.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's one way they can force agencies to do it. I think there's, a lot of ways. I think just natural growth of jiu-jitsu, the UFC. I'm really excited about the UFC adding jiu-jitsu as more of a professional sport. It'll never be what MMA is, in my opinion. because I think that you need to have a jiu-jitsu mind to watch it. But them adding that as an element is going to raise awareness to jiu-jitsu. I know there's several movies in the hunt right now. I know Jocko is doing a whole movie with the Warrior Kid, where it's gonna the Warrior Kid book he did. It's gonna be making it into a movie.
I didn't know that.
And that whole premise of the movie is the uncle is like a jiu-jitsu black belt. It's gonna be like a modern day Karate Kid, but for jiu-jitsu. So I think that there's elements within society that are going to grow this, and if we can just keep that tied to policing, I think it'll be amazing.
Yeah, man. So this whole time you've been very positive about this, and you mentioned the power of the internet, and at no point did I ever hear you talking shit about anybody. You weren't bad mouthing anybody. You walked us through the journey that you were on. You've done a lot of work. You've probably made a lot of mistakes. You've certainly had a lot of successes. And again, there's a model here. It's the model. Again, you talked about square peg or round pegs and round holes versus square pegs and round holes. But I think they're trying to. What you did was you thought outside the box, right? And but with a very healthy respect and understanding of what was inside the box. And then you had some influences. People go, no, you actually don't need to have that certified as long as it meets this criteria. And I think people often get caught in that little box of, I can't do it because, versus, well, what can we do? How do we bend the rules? You have to, obviously there has to be some very black and white, like nope, I'm not bending to certification or instructor certification. I'm not doing that. But that's something that's way down the line. Like, we got to get this thing started. We got to get this thing in different places. So before I ask you about how people could do that and get involved with OSS, the question I would have is, and it's kind of a broad one, and it's kind of maybe it's a softball or maybe it's not, and there's too much to answer here, but if you've got folks out there right now that really want to do this, like they see the problem, they see the gaps, they feel like they're in a little bit of a vacuum, they want to make some change, they want to start to influence things differently at their own agency or with their own groups, and maybe it's not the agency, maybe it's like, I need to start a group, I need to start a group of guys that are like-minded and just kind of get this going. How do they do that? What advice do you give them? Where do they start with this?
I think the first thing is, you have to really be passionate about it. It's got to be a lifestyle to you. It can't just be a thing on my list I want to do. Like when I started doing this, again, I never intended to start a program. I never intended to open a martial arts school, never mind two. I never intended on any of these things. I was just training and I wanted to make myself better because I rose my hand and said, I want to be a cop. Like, nobody held a gun to my head. And I said, hey, part of being a cop is knowing how to handle yourself and handle situations. So it's on me. The academy can only provide so much. The police department can only provide so much. It's on me to make myself a professional tactical athlete and make it a lifestyle. So I chose to do that. My neighbors thought I was crazy half the time, doing those little workouts we would do in our backyard and stuff, right? So I took it upon myself to do that. And then at some point, you can only bring yourself so far. So you hopefully have to find that other person near you that's, hey, let's work together, and then maybe they know somebody and they know somebody, and it starts to build, and you have to be. I went into this like, it just sounds cliche. It sounds like, oh, you're not raising. I would have rather died than not completed my jiu-jitsu black belt. I would have. Like, I was not quitting. Like, I would literally, I'm not quitting. I'm never gonna quit. I'm gonna go right through it, and I put that same mentality towards training cops. And it was that important to me. And I especially with some of the calls I was on in my career, and I saw, some bad things happen, saw some cops, not make it out or get seriously injured. And it was kind of a turning point in my career at one point where I'm like, do I want to become a chief or do I want to change the culture of law enforcement, right? And you have to have that reason. What's your why? What's your why? What's your reason? What's your driving force behind you? You have to have it within you. It's if it's not in you, you're not going to do it.
I love that. It's got to be an internal drive, and you clearly have like a deep rooted why. And like with the black belt example, it's like, I would rather die. Right, like that. It doesn't get much more clear than that, right? Like, if that's truly how you feel about it, and it's not just something that you're saying, right? You truly feel that way, you're going to get it done, right? Because you're not going to die, right? And again, I think you're going back to some of your statements before. It was just, why are you doing this? But is it for you, or is it something bigger than you? And I want to believe that most cops become cops because it is bigger than them. They truly want to serve. They truly want to make a difference in their community. And they have all different reasons for why they've been driven to feel that way, but they often lose sight of that with bureaucracies and leadership change and change in general and frustrations, the things that they see, the things that they can control versus the things that they can't control versus the things they can control. But you seem to be a guy who is only focused on what you can control. And because you've done that, it has given you some level of freedom, flexibility, autonomy, ultimately control of how this thing looks and feels and how it's being perpetuated. And I think that's super powerful and how it started and where you are now. Maybe that's certainly a takeaway for me, but hopefully that's a takeaway for other people.
Yeah.
I think it's really solid. Yep.
Of course, one important thing I kind of failed to mention that I think is important, especially now, you have all these companies traveling all over. I used to travel. I would go around and teach all over. And I will still occasionally do, a few a year at different places. But I decided I want to make the most impact in my area where I'm from. And if I'm traveling all over the country week by week by week, and I'm away from my family, my kids, and my schools, and I'm starting these little fires for a week, and then I leave and the fire goes out, versus stay home and make our own house really nice. You know what I mean? And I just felt like if I concentrate on this area, we can make real change versus maybe change other places. So I think that's kind of, if you're going to go into something, like if you spread yourself too thin, what are you really changing?
Yeah, the good idea fairy can creep in, and then the next thing you know, you're on the route. Look, I've done that too. I've been in that situation myself where I traveled all over the country and did something different but similar in terms of going and trying to fix things or provide value in a very short time period. Yeah, that has a time limit on it. There's an expiration date on that, and it's generally way sooner than you realize it up front. It's when you get 1 to 2 years into it and you're just like, I'm never home. My health sucks. I'm not actually training. All I'm doing is teaching. I'm not feeling fulfilled, and I don't have that fire anymore. And then that leads to weird stuff, weird decision-making, compromising things, and ultimately deteriorating not just yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, all that kind of stuff, but obviously the quality of the product that you're trying to put out. That's a huge deal. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that do a great job with that, but most of them have started with a really solid infrastructure and have gone through a process of making sure they onboard people that can assist and pad that or cushion that time away and what's actually getting done or accomplished on the other end. So that said, just with what OSS is doing, and I love what you said there, is like, just focus on your people, right, and your tribe, and then maybe try to build that tribe, and then make sure you have people within that tribe that can influence the tribe a little bit further out. How do people get involved with OSS? Talk about that a little bit. Like, I know you are on the road a little bit. You are teaching. You do have folks out there or folks on your staff that do this well in their own agencies or whatnot. But if somebody's interested in getting involved with OSS, researching it a little bit more, or coming to a course, where do they go? How do they find out more about it? What do you want them to know?
Sure. We have a website. It's officersurvivalseries.com. And the website has a ton of information. It's got most of the upcoming classes that are open to the public, I should say, or open to agencies, because we do a lot of training that's closed. That's like agencies will hire us specifically for them. And like next week, Department of Corrections, that's a class that's not on our website, but it's a full class. It's sold out because it's just for that agency. So anything that's open is on that website. And then we have my martial arts school. If you go to bushidobjj.com, there's a whole bunch of information on there about me, about the jiu-jitsu community that I have here, and about OSS is on there as well. They're linked together. And then the Connecticut SWAT Challenge, Our Heroes Fund, that's another situation you can look up. I'm heavily involved with them to this day from the very beginning on providing training to the tactical teams. And then I take part with Invictus and Combatives Association. I'm Instagram under my name, Rob Magao. And we have the page for my schools. We have the page for the police jiu-jitsu team. We have the page for Officer Survival Series. We'll put stuff up on there as well. And we do a lot of video. We have a lot of body cam stuff that agencies have given us, but we don't really put it on social media because we have like an agreement with the agencies, like, hey, we'll give you this for training, but we don't want it.
Yep.
Now, if it's something that's been released to the news and is out there, that's different. We'll use it. But we got a lot of good body cam footage that we'll use. It's not necessarily on our Instagram page because we show it in the class, because we don't want to embarrass the cops if we don't have to. And some of these haven't been released to the public yet, so we do it that way. So in case people go on the page and they don't see a lot of that, that's kind of why. And that's basically
That's interesting that you say that, because that seems to be, obviously it's a very popular thing to do. It gets a lot of views, gets a lot of clicks, likes, comments, and all that stuff, and you put that out there. But again, that goes back to the intention of like, what's the point of putting this out there? Is this to better my, to get more followers, to get more likes, or whatever, or, because that's what Instagram is. That's basically what Instagram is. Let's publicize something and let's see how much attention we can get. Most of the time, it doesn't all need to be on the internet. It doesn't all need to be on Instagram. And I appreciate that. And again, keeping that trust with the people that you work with is the reason you're in the position that you're in. And I can't think of a more valuable thing than to see something that you're doing or could have been done in real time, like happening right there in front of you, and going, this is the application for this, or this was wrong. This is what we need to improve on. This is what we're going to talk about today. So you can go to OSS. My eyebrows went up a little while ago when you said you were going to be out in Lake Tahoe at Invictus. That's just up the road from me. In terms of, I guess, the videos and stuff, you were talking about, I love what you're doing with your social media. I love that it's an inside look of what's going on the mats. This is like, call it marketing if you want, but it's always full. It's always folks in there that are rolling around and putting in work. It doesn't look, it's the word I'm looking for. It's not a sexy thing. It's just like, this is what we do. And I think that's what people need to see. And you guys have been doing a really great job with that. I'm always intrigued by it. You don't have to say a lot. It's just like, this is it. This is what we do. And it matches up with everything that you said. And I think a lot of everything you've talked about today, I think a lot of people do that. They're like, okay, so I see this Instagram stuff. Who is this person? What is this person really like behind the scenes? And I'll say it again, said it 100 times already today. The folks that I've met, that I've been fortunate enough to speak with and have given me their time like you have today, are exactly the same way, man. And I mean that, like, not you guys are cookie cutter, but there's a little crowd work that needs to be done to market the business, but the real work gets done when you're there. And it's the same people behind it's the same people that in front of the camera that you may hear when you get them offline. And the best discussions I've ever had have been those offline discussions in person. I'll be super curious to know how those conversations go when you're out here on the West Coast, and what kind of inroads or enemies you make in the process. But I'm sure that won't be publicized. But maybe I'll ask Bill. Maybe he'll give me some insights to it.
Yeah, I know. And again, don't get me wrong. Like, those guys are all great, and they're just in some of these groups, and it might not even be them saying some of the stuff. It's just that they're in these groups, and other people are. I don't see what the need for it is. Like we were talking before we got on the live podcast here, is I was talking about how the jiu-jitsu world doesn't really understand the law enforcement.
Right.
The law enforcement doesn't understand the jiu-jitsu world, and you get a lot of. I saw many videos lately where they're showing a police interaction. The cop doesn't know what he's doing, and then they show this jiu-jitsu black belt who's that's all he is a jiu-jitsu black belt, right? And he's showing these fancy moves on how he would flip the person over and take the person into custody. And it's like, you have no idea the equipment, there's no, like, in jiu-jitsu class, slap bump, it's time to go, right? In a real fight, there is no like moment where it starts. Like, it's just very different. They don't understand the two worlds. I'm trying to bridge those two worlds. So I think that this does a great job with that. And I think just some of the people that go to any of these camps, if we could just all get on the same page and not fight each other, would be great.
Yeah, I love that. I am actually just trying to set up an interaction with maybe one of those people. You didn't say a name, but I may be able to get in front of one of those people a little later in the week. Some of the things that I see, I'm an infant in this realm. I have very little experience. Never been a cop. Never been in the military. Have very little training under my belt from the jiu-jitsu side of things. I did wrestle. I've seen a few things seen a few things, been maybe involved in a few other things. My point being is I just approach this as like, what does this person have to bring to the table? But when I'm watching some of this stuff that you just described, I'm like, well, at no point in any of this did I see anybody wearing kit, right? A gun, right? A tool belt, so to speak, and going through this, I'm like, well, what does it look like there? Just show it to me. Like, I'd like to see it, like, but I never get to see it. So my questions are like, well, what does this really look like? How is this really applied? So I may have the opportunity to actually see that coming up here soon, and I'll be curious about it. But I want to be clear about the poking the bears or stirring the pot or anything. Like, you at no point did you make it sound like that. I just want to be clear. I didn't think that. I'm just curious to know how you're received. That's all.
I'll let you know. I say it in front of the whole group. Whenever I give my speech, I tell there's the 150 people at this thing that are paying to go there. I say it to everybody. I don't hold back.
So does Cliff. So does Matt. So does Craig. All the guys that you that I know. Aaron, he'll do the same. All you guys are all the same that way, and I appreciate that about you. So, look, man, I really appreciate the time that you spent with me today to help me understand not just your process, but what's going on there. I've talked to very few people that have actually had the success level that you've had in sort of penetrating the larger institution with this. Some guys run schools, or and some guys have, but not. I think this is the missing link. Like, we're right on, like you said, it's growing. There's more information out there. It's more accessible. It seems to me like we're right on the verge of really kind of moving into that next warp speed on what this could be. And maybe it's the insurance companies that press this, and that's good for guys like you to get into places that you need to be into and that people need you there for. I don't know, but I like this kind of energy, but also just the where it is and that it's becoming more visible and people can communicate it more. It seems to be that we're kind of right on the verge of this thing kind of blowing up. You and the guys from the Combatives Association and what they're putting together there and how they're doing that. It's just kind of one tribe at a time. Let's grow this thing. Let's bring people in. Everybody's, not everybody. It's somewhat exclusive, just like your instructor program. There are some qualifications that you should have to earn a ticket to the show, kind of thing. But at the same time, we're not going to tell you suck. We're just going to tell you what's real, and we're going to tell you how to get better. And in your case, you're providing them opportunities to do that, whether that's through the school, whether that's through the state, or the free education or training that people get after coming through for the first time. And those are all, I think, really important components of the success that obviously you've had, but that will help other people be successful. So I appreciate you sharing that with me, and with the folks on that are listening to this that have made it this far. So anyway, man, if there's anything that I can do to support you guys and what you're doing out there, and beyond this podcast, please don't ever hesitate to ask or reach out. I don't really know what that would be, but at the same time, like, I love what you're doing. I think again, the circle that you run with says a lot about who you are. We've talked very, very first time. I know you asked a dude about me, like, hey, who is this guy? Should I, is this worth the conversation? And that means a lot to me, that, somehow somebody has trusted me to then put my name in your inbox or whatever and say, hey man, this could be a good guy to talk to. So, again, if there's anything I can do for you moving forward, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. We will get this thing out there. I'm anxious to see kind of what the feedback is and hear some responses or whatnot. But again, man, best of luck to you. Best of luck with OSS. Travel safe out here to California. Enjoy your time up in the mountains of beautiful Lake Tahoe. And I look forward to maybe talking to you again in the near future, meeting face-to-face sometime. Maybe, are you going to Combatives Summit this year?
I'm hoping to, yeah. Mississippi, I'm waiting on. I have a course that week, and I'm trying to figure out the flights if I can make it. So if I can, I'll be there.
All right. Well, I'm planning on being there myself, so hopefully we'll get to shake hands and I'll get to say thanks in person. But again, man, appreciate you. Best of luck out there, and hope to talk soon.
Thanks a lot.